Raziel, Daziel, and this bitch. So, we're doing part two of the anti-mid-range build. But I have a small public service announcement, and that's basically to discuss a couple of things as far as the subscribers go. It seems that I'm about to hit a milestone. It's very impressive. I didn't think I would ever get this known, but I started off with about four subscribers, and it basically grew. I think I'm knocking on the door at 1,000. So that means that one, you guys like my shit. Two, I guess I'm doing something right. And three, I might become relevant someday. But I appreciate the support, guys. And, I do curse a lot. This is a vulgar channel. I keep it 100. This channel is not for kids that, that have very virgin ears. So with all that being said, I want to go ahead and move forward to what you guys are waiting for, because I have to do part 3 of this video. If I keep going with part 2 and keep going with it, it's going to be like an hour-long video. Okay, so we're going to get to it. So on this video, we're going to discuss the long rangers and the troops that you guys are using and understanding them a little bit more, okay? So in the last video we discussed, it was discussing the kind of troops that people were using, the mid-rangers were using to fight you guys, and a little bit of Katie, and we'll go over her a little bit more this time. But the majority of these fights that you guys are doing as a long ranger is, typically your Cobra snipers and your Doomsday Cannons are basically the cream of the crop as far as, guns goes. The Doomsday Cannons are 100% without a reasonable fucking doubt the most strongest gun in the fucking game, dude. This bitch fucks people up, bro. I don't know what the fuck it is, bro, but they just are, bro. The uranium cannons, they're strong for what they were, but it's like the Cobra snipers were really good. I found out that when I fought Mr. Dr. Herb, he's a really great player. I'm going to show you guys a video of that. But basically, it shows, I fight him heads up. He's running the full Eagle Eye snipers versus my Doomsdays. We begin our fight, and he's got better titles than me, better stats than me, and as the fight progresses, I find myself at a slight advantage, and I'm like, bro, what the fuck? I'm like, these bitches are really fucking shit up, you know what I'm saying? The Eagle Eyes, I feel like they've been just nerfed. I mean, I feel like that and the snipers in general, like, they're not as, I feel, in my opinion, I feel they are not as impactful as when you unlock the Cobra snipers. I have no idea why. I just don't like them. They're great. I believe that the Eagle Eyes are great for knocking out a front row, but I believe that Camel focused tier 12s for more even combat, so that you can use a variety of types of troops when you're fighting, which basically comes to my next point, and that comes from understanding the kind of troops that you're using and the majority of them. So the Eagle Eye basically is really deadly. They do some serious damage. They do some of the most hardest damage in the game. Basically concentrated damage to one point. And what I mean by that is it kills, it does, 1.3 times damage to a single enemy. So what mid-rangers do is they basically run an extremely powerful front line in order to protect the mid-range, like the mid-range troops. So you'll always see a ton of shredders or a ton of hell tanks. If you're fighting tier 12s, you'll see a ton of hell tanks. And then, whenever they unlock the Hell King, then yeah, they're fucking some shit up. So what the snipers do is the snipers burn through this. This is what the snipers love to burn through, is these front lines right here. These things are food for the snipers. So as a long ranger, believe it or not, you actually have an advantage against mid-rangers. And we'll go over that in the third video, and I'm going to show when we cover formations. But for this, we're just covering the troops and then the stats of what you guys need to look at, because these stats are going to be important. Okay, so ultimately, we discussed Katie and how important she was to amplify damage. and to melee troops and to the to the mid range troops. She's a character that came out specifically for mid range. For mid range. This is basically you use her to basically kick mid rangers' ass, and she's a troop specifically designed to go fuck up mid rangers. So another thing is my buddy Dino here. He's been I'm not gonna say he's my student. He's a very well gifted player. He's amazing. I saw him having a little bit of trouble with certain mid rangers, and I believe his name was Apollo. Apollo, this is Apollo right here. He's an extremely powerful player. Um, he could see his mid range attack is 844, but his, increased damage to long range troops is high as shit, and his reduced damage from long range troops is high as shit too. This guy is an extremely brutal and formidable opponent. Like he is very strong. Just watching him and Dino go at it, just it's really interesting to watch. Dino eventually started getting a little bit of a few tips from me on how to like fight him. Typically he likes to overwhelm mid rangers by basically throwing a ton of troops at him. That's one way of fight. That's a completely different way of fighting. That's just to give him the overall advantage of more troops. Um, but as you can see, Dino's long range is 858%. His stats aren't as good as Apollo's, which is this gentleman right here. Apollo's stats, are really, really badass. Like this guy is a very extremely brutal and formidable opponent. So this is basically Dino, running a very skinnier front line and having a beefy back row. As you can see, he's running some snipers, but he's running mostly doomsdays, and the doomsdays are just going to work on Apollo, burning through his mid range, troops. That's one fight right there. This is another fight. It seems like he's had it. Dino's doing really good, and he's focusing on long range HP as well. So let's talk about this really quick. Okay, so the Apollo, he focuses a lot on his mid-range attack, which is basically, the standard, But what he does is he has amplified damage to the long range, and he also reduces the damage intake. But amplified damage is extremely important when you're fighting mid-rangers, because what happens is he has concentrated damage, and that is really what's the game changer right there, ladies and gentlemen. It's the fucking amplified damage. Now, where do you get that stat at? How do you run and do this? So this is a fight, okay, where Dino fought him, right? And if we're looking at this, Apollo had no front line, okay? Dino had a front line. He ran a front line, a decent front line right here, okay? His stats were a little bit lower here. But again, Apollo didn't, So let's look at this fight really quick. So as you can see, he burns through the front line, burning, and he's just doing damage all around. All across the board, he's doing extreme damage. And he just burns through it. He's burning through it, and now his back's exposed. As you can see, he's fighting him, and, it's just, he's lacking that, that amplified damage. He's losing this fight because of the amplified damage that Apollo's doing to him. It's still kind of close, but you can clearly see that he's lacking the long range attack for him and the increased damage to mid range. So he's lacking that. He doesn't have the sauce. Eventually, when he did ended up getting his formations correctly and increasing his damage output, and this one, he's increased his long range, but he added. Let's go ahead and compare just for shits. Okay, so in this fight where he lost, okay, so his long range was 835, and his long range HP was 630%. It seems like he was kind of boosted here. Okay, and he lost this fight, and then when he won, he had slightly higher long range. More, he had a little bit better formations, better better, slightly better stats. So let's go ahead and compare. So, in this one, 406, he got his ass kicked. Okay. We're going to go right back into it. All right. And then go into his victory. Going back into it. So there you go. Mid-range attack down 36.3%. Let's go ahead and look at the defeat. Okay. So what happened? How did Dino beat Apollo? Let's go ahead and look at it really quick. So Dino lost in this fight right here. How does he lose when he has somewhat of a decent front line and he just ran a typical formation here? How did he lose this fight and why did he win on this one? Let's look at this fight. Now you're gonna see something different here. It seems that Apollo's running a different front line as well. He ran a slightly more front line, like just one of everything, and he split the troop count between gunners and havoc dominators. But again, Dino is doing a lot of damage to him. He's doing a lot of fucking damage to him. And he beats him. More long range skills. That's what he did, and he ran. Let's look. Okay, decent front line. There we go. So what is the skill that you need to work on? Like what is it? Like what is it that's going to help you fight mid rangers? What is it going to be that's going to help you seal the deal against them? If you notice that in Apollo's fights. In Apollo's fights, I mean, this guy's an amazing player. There's not enough things I can say about him. He's running an asinine, he's just a crazy, crazy formation. He doesn't give a fuck, But if you notice that his increased damage to long range is high as fuck, 66.5%. That's serious amplified damage. So where do you get these stats at? How do you worry about, how do you get that? Well, number one is leveling up your Zeus. Zeus does damage dealt to all troops. He amplifies that. But most importantly, also your equipment. Your equipment basically has these things called, the components in the middle. And sometimes they could be in different locations for each thing. But, the component in the middle, reduce damage from long-range troops. And then you have the increased damage to long-range troops, okay? So you want to get that up. You know what I'm saying? Like the increased damage to long-range troops and the increased damage to mid-range. You want to get that up. You want to level that up, okay? That's going to help you do amplified damage to mid-rangers a lot better, okay? So what happens? What does that mean? Whenever you focus on that and you're fighting a mid-ranger, they're going to be intaking more damage, and you're also going to be reducing the amount of damage that they're handing out to you. So therefore, you're living a little bit longer to fight them. Ultimately, when, people always have this misconception that, oh my God, I need to have a high long range and a high melee attack and all this stuff. That's not always the fight that always wins. I've beaten people who've had higher long range than me, and I've had more melee HP than them, So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. The next video, we're gonna cover formations and how to fight them. But again, this one specifically to cover the snipers and to cover, the components that you need in order to increase and reduce damage to from mid rangers and increase damage to them. You know what I mean? So see, increased damage to mid range troops, long range troops, and melee troops. Yeah, this is covering that kind of stuff. So that going in, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, guys. Stay tuned for part 3. I just wanted to give you guys an understanding, because when we get to part 3, we're gonna go into it. Like, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna cover formations, what's winning, what isn't, how to beat these guys, and how to outlast them. Okay, guys. So thank you so much for watching this channel. I really appreciate you guys. Hit like on this on part 2. Part 3 will be coming out in a few days. I apologize it took so long, but you wanna stay tuned to this, okay, guys? So I appreciate it. This is Raziel. Love you guys. Signing off.